So I absolutely do think that analytics, Jeffrey Lurie's a big believer in it. And you mentioned Alex and a couple of the other people. So if those people do have heavy influence, I can see friction between the football department and all the scouts who spend all the time going out and researching and looking at them, and analytics people who mostly are going by numbers and information on a page or a spreadsheet. So I think that is happening across all of sports now. I don't want to say a division, but there is kind of a conflict sometimes of analytics versus football people. And my heart tells me that you should listen to your football people and your scouts, because they're the ones, because you got to see inside a guy's heart as well. And you got to see, is he obsessed and addicted to football and wanting to be the best? So I think that's a great point, and it is happening.
A Football Friday edition of Birds 365. Johnny Mac, Jody Mac, Mac guys here with you. We're very grateful to have our next guest joining us. He is Johnny Sunshine, John Clark from NBC Sports, Channel 10, NBC Sports Philly, and his podcast, the Takeoff Podcast. Johnny Clark, how are you?
Good morning. Just like you guys, we have a lot of job titles.
Yeah, I want to thank you. You had a late night, John. So thanks for hopping on the program. But I do want to mention your new podcast, Takeoff. You can subscribe at NBC Sports Philadelphia, and obviously your first one, the biggest get, Doug Peterson, obviously in lieu of getting fired and all the issues with Jeffrey Lurie. So you got to talk with Doug down from South Florida, Josh Peterson, his son, in the mix to be drafted this year as a tight end. What were your takeaways? You know, did you see the weight lifted off the shoulders of Doug Peterson?
Oh, my goodness. Yes. I mean, I saw a tan face, rejuvenated, refreshed. I joked with him. I said, it looks like when a president leaves office after 4 years. And so, yeah, I do think he is in a really good place. And look, he wants to get back and be a head coach next year, but he is glad to take a year off at this point, rejuvenate, be with his family, and he's really pushing for his son Josh to be drafted. But it was good to catch up with Doug. And then, look, I see both sides of it. Doug did want a chance to come back and get this team right, but Eagles ownership, maybe wanted some younger, fresh ideas with the coaching staff, and Doug was loyal to his coaching staff, and they just disagreed on how they were going to move forward. So I do see both sides to this. But yes, Doug is in a great place. He's golfing every day. So eventually someday we may see him on the senior tour.
We'll certainly look forward to that. And you're allowed to wear visors when you golf. So that's a natural for Doug. And I know he came in gray, but I think you're right about president after 4 years in office. They always leave at least a little bit grayer, and that might have been the case with Doug as well. Is he going to do anything this year other than golf and watch his son and root for his son? Because there were some rumors about him being talked to potentially go and be an offensive coordinator. He was tied to Seattle, at least in conversation. Is he going to do anything football related this year before he hopes to get back on that coaching carousel next year?
You know, I think there's two kinds of guys in professional football. There's like the Andy Reids and the Chip Kellys, where they are just absolutely addicted to it and they need it. I mean, Andy had a lot of personal issues, and yet he still jumped into another job immediately, less than a week after he was fired by the Eagles. I don't think Doug is that type of guy. I do think he needs a year off. I mean, this was probably his hardest year in his professional football career, getting COVID and just everything collapsing with this Eagles team this year. So I think unless it was a head coaching job, and he was thrown into the pool late because it was after everybody else was let go, I think unless it was a head coaching job, he was going to take a year off and just recharge and be with his family. And it's good to see. And I just want to say one quick thing. I really enjoy reading all of your inside football stuff, John and Jody. I'm gonna ask you two quick questions. When I was a little kid, I remember being down the shore, and I would always listen to your wrestling show at like 3 a.m. on a radio station in New York.
Correct.
we couldn't hear it inside the Shore House down in Sea Isle City. So I had to go sit out in a car when I was a teenager at 3 a.m. to listen to your wrestling radio show. So props to you. And one more thing. When my buddy and I, Mark Stern, when I was finishing up high school, we had a wrestling convention near the airport, and you were the MC.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a wrestler who kept unplugging your microphone while you were trying to talk to the crowd and all the wrestling fans. Do you remember who that was?
Believe it was Sid Vicious, was it not?
Oh, Sid Vicious.
Good night.
You know, John, I told Jody that you used to publish the Wrestling Flyer newsletter. And I said, John was getting interviews with big time wrestlers when nobody was getting interviews. I mean, maybe Wade Keller for people who know wrestling. Other than that, it was John. And I think you were in high school, if I'm correct.
Yes, I was.
And, you know, one of the things is I think that had to be valuable for you in a way to get started that early for your career and what you've made it into. And obviously, NBC Sports Philadelphia, everybody knows John Clark in Philadelphia. In a serious note to pro wrestling, how much did that help you in your journey to being a sports broadcaster?
You know what? That's a great point. Immensely, because I learned from that for somebody else to do an interview or somebody to do something, they have to get something out of it. Just like we're trying to get content. We're all trying to get something out of it. And never go in with an interview subject and not be honest with them about what you're trying to get. And so, you know, everything in life is a transaction, and it's all about relationships. So they need to be able to get something out of it, as do I. And I've always learned from that experience to treat them with respect and honesty, and don't come at them sideways trying to get an interview by saying, oh, well, it'll do this for you, or we're trying to get this. Be honest and upfront about your approach. And then, you know, respect people as human beings, but trust is everything. And I remember those interviews. I guess they eventually became known as shoot interviews. I remember being on the phone with Kerry Von Erich, and he dropped his phone in the toilet. Interview. And Roddy Piper talking about being homeless as a kid and getting food out of dumpsters. I mean, it was amazing because the stories behind all these wrestlers, it's mind-boggling. It'd be the greatest 30 for 30 documentary of all time.
The only other guy who back in the day, yes, it was a long time ago when I had my wrestling segment on WFAN in New York, was Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer, who came on our show several times as a guest. He had connection enough to get wrestling guests as well. Maybe not as good as Johnny Clark, but he did get wrestling guests as well.
Dave Meltzer is the GOAT.
Yeah, he's the GOAT, but he's more of a reporter. John was getting these interviews when nobody was getting interviews. Dave doesn't really do, you know, interviews in his reporting.
Yeah.
So I mean, I thought it was amazing at the time. I was like, who's this kid from Philadelphia getting all these interviews with big time wrestlers? So
I remember Bill Watts one time. I was interviewing him, and I was on the phone with him at 5 o'clock, and he tells me, "Now, hell's bells, kid. You can't put this out there. You can't say anything, but we're going to take the belt off of Ron Simmons tonight in Baltimore." Like, what? Now, good thing there wasn't Twitter back then, because I would have been itching to put that out there.
Yeah, and also our buddy Adam Kaplan is also should be in this conversation as well, because he's a wrestling guy.
Yeah,
we got a lot of good wrestling guys, but we'll bring it back to the Eagles for a couple of minutes. All right, Johnny Clark. This is an ongoing competition between myself and my partner here on what the Eagles are going to do at number 12. Assuming they stay at 12, are they going to take an interior player or an outside player? Outside being cornerback or wide receiver, basically interior being anything else. I'll give you safety. I'll give you linebacker. I'll let those be interiors. Are they going to take an inside guy or an outside guy if they stay at number 12?
I'll tell you guys, I think anything can happen in this draft. I think if a guy that Howie and the Eagles want is there at 9, 10, something like that, I think they've got the ammunition. They've got the most picks in the draft. I think they've got the ammunition to move up. So really, I think there's like a better than 50% chance of that happening. But I think, see, this is what's crazy, because in the back of my mind, I'm saying they know that these championships are won starting with the offensive line and defensive line. I think if there's an edge rusher there that they really, really like, I think they could do that. Yeah, and you put me on the spot. I really think that this could go anyway. But I will say, I think they go with cornerback, and I think you could see Patrick Surtain as an Eagle. I love Daniel Jeremiah's pick, and I think the Eagles could move up to take him from the Cowboys.
Well, you bring up Daniel Jeremiah. He was your latest guest on the podcast, Take Off with John Clark. And obviously, Daniel used to be a scout here with the Eagles. I know you asked him about Jeffrey Lurie's influence, John. You saw all the reports coming out from the athletic guys this week about Jeffrey's imprint on this organization. Daniel kind of told you it hasn't changed that much. Is that correct?
Yeah, and look, maybe Daniel right now doesn't know if Jeffrey Lurie, according to the reports, is saying, hey, this has to be Jalen Hurts' year. We need to build around him. He needs to be the guy. So maybe he doesn't know that. But he described how back when he was a scout with the Eagles, Jeff Lurie would review the video, the tape. He would have his binder there with all of the information about all of the draft picks. And he wasn't deciding who would be drafted, but he was asking challenging questions of everybody. Why are you deciding on this guy? Why not go with this guy? And so he said that is a very important thing, to challenge all of the decision makers and understand the why of their thinking. So Daniel described it as a good thing, and he didn't see it as meddling, but he can't speak to right now. Don't know if things have changed maybe since the Super Bowl or since the Chip Kelly experience.
With the fact that this is a brand new coaching staff, all the drafts that have gone on during Jeff Lurie's era here in Philadelphia, Andy Reid for so many years, Chip Kelly into Doug Peterson, the coaching staff has had varying influences on each and every single draft. I'm sure Andy Reid's grew over time. Chip Kelly was able to get to a point where he could push Howie Roseman to the side. And Doug Peterson, although don't know that he had enough say over his own coaching staff, I do think he was listened to on draft night. Does Nick Sirianni have any pull coming into this draft as a new Philadelphia Eagle, as a new head coach? Do he and his staff move the needle at all on any three of the draft nights this year?
It's a very good question. And I mean, I do think, Jonathan Gannon, new defensive coordinator, you got all these coaches trying to get guys for them. So I think Howie satisfied his need for a linebacker with the signing of Eric Wilson. So I think, obviously they all have influence. It's interesting you asked that, because I think right now, Howie Roseman, there's so many voices. I think Howie Roseman and Andy Weidel need to listen to what they believe is best. And I think every team says they're going to draft the best player, right? Well, you go back last year, and Jalen Reagor has a skill set, the speed that is good on the outside, right? And I remember interviewing Howie after the draft, and he said, look, Andy Reid and our coaches all talk about, for the West Coast offense, to open it up for the tight ends in the middle, the running back passes, you need speed on the outside. So maybe they did not go with the best player because of a certain need or a want of the coaching staff, and Howie probably liked Jalen Reagor as well. But I think you have to go with the best player. If Justin Jefferson, he had the production. If he's the best player, go with him. It looks like they were trying to satisfy the want and the desire of what the offense needed. So I think in this case, go with the best player, find a way to make it work. And I think ultimately Howie and Andy Weidel will have the most influence. Maybe Nick Sirianni has a little bit, but he is new. And I think Howie and Andy Weidel have to go with the best player and not necessarily listening to other voices.
Well, John, let's circle back to your Doug Peterson interview, because you mentioned you saw both sides. One side is that draft and how many cooks there are in the kitchen. And one name you didn't mention was Alec Calaby, who's the vice president of strategy and sort of the analytics guy. So when you have all these people chiming in, does it make you more susceptible to that type of mistake when you say, oh, Justin Jefferson, probably the better football player, but we need a manufactured touch guy, or we need a speed guy? Do you think that creates more issues than there need to be?
I think you have hit to the biggest point here, and I think this is going on in all of sports. There was forever the old school eye test. I know, Jody, your dad was a scout. the guys who went on the road and saw these players in person, traveled to see them, and got to see them interact with all of their teammates, all the things that scouts do. And then along came analytics. And I got to be honest with you. I mean, I've seen it with the Sixers. The Sixers made a lot of mistakes over the last few years because of analytics. Al Horford may be one of them if you talk to certain people, and certain decisions were made about analytics. And Daryl Morey comes in. He is the king of analytics. I mean, he maybe brought analytics to the NBA, Sam Hinkie as well. The Phillies, right? John Middleton, I remember asking him about analytics, and he said, listen, I'm the one driving the bus with analytics in the Phillies organization. And they hired, a complete overhaul of the staff with tons of analytics people. So I absolutely do think that analytics, Jeffrey Lurie's a big believer in it. And you mentioned Alex and a couple of the other people. So if those people do have heavy influence, I can see friction between the football department and all the scouts who spend all the time going out and researching and looking at them, and analytics people who mostly are going by numbers and information on a page or a spreadsheet. So I think that is happening across all of sports now. I don't want to say a division, but there is kind of a conflict sometimes of analytics versus football people. And my heart tells me that you should listen to your football people and your scouts, because they're the ones, because you got to see inside a guy's heart as well. And you got to see, is he obsessed and addicted to football and wanting to be the best? So I think that's a great point, and it is happening everywhere.
Johnny, let's talk about the most important position on a football team. And Jeff Floyd will tell you it's owner. Howie Roseman will tell you it's general manager. And Nick Sirianni might tell you it's coach. It's quarterback. You live and die with quarterback play, and the guy who's getting the ball snapped to him 50% of your plays every single year. I know you have to have all those other things, and everyone has to do their job and or put forth the money to be able to do their job. But a lot of times it comes down to quarterback. There's a reason why Tom Brady keeps winning Super Bowl after Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers has the Packers as far in the playoffs every year as he does. It's about quarterbacks. The Eagles have a quarterback for 2021. At least we all believe so, and it's Jalen Hurts. And they've committed to him for one whole year. Now, if this is Carson Wentz, we were still talking about, we'd have issues because Carson Wentz couldn't handle it when anyone was looking over his shoulder. And if it wasn't 100% Carson Wentz, as far as we can report and tell, they said this is Jalen Hurts' year. 2022, get back to us in 12 months. We'll tell you where we're at about him being our future quarterback. Is this young man going to be able to step up, strive, and accomplish what he needs to become, quote unquote, the future quarterback of the Eagles under the rules, the guidelines, the labels that they're setting for him for this upcoming season, in your opinion? Well,
I tell you what, for Philadelphia Eagles fans, I mean, that would be the perfect scenario. If Jalen Hurts, and this is like, I don't want to say it's a one-year audition, but he has a chance this year to prove that he can be the guy. If he can improve on some of the things that he needs to work on and be the quarterback, that would be the best case scenario for this organization, because then you have three first-round draft picks next year that you could spend on talent around him. Obviously, if he doesn't work out, they've got those 3 first-round picks to either trade for a quarterback or draft a quarterback. But Jalen Hurts, I think he has qualities to be a starter in the NFL, but I think he's got to work on some things. I think that he can take all of this and the competition if another quarterback comes in because of his college experience. He wasn't handed everything along the way. He had stuff taken away from him. And obviously he has competed. And look, he improved as a passer at Oklahoma last year. I think a couple of times I saw him maybe on the run and he had an open skill player in the end zone and wasn't able to get the ball to that skill player. I need to see an improvement with that, and accuracy is going to be his biggest thing. But let's not forget last year that, there's no off season with mini camps and all that. So he jumps into training camp, and Carson Wentz is going to get all the reps pretty much during the season. So he was thrown in there. And I think all of last year, Doug Peterson, because the offensive line was so wrecked, historically wrecked, he had to kind of dial things back for the offense, because you also had some young players like Jalen Reagor, who's trying to learn different positions. You don't want him to have to learn all three positions, boom, right away. So I think it was not the best situation for Jalen Hurts to be thrown into. I think this offseason, him getting a chance to be with all of the younger skill players, I think is going to be huge from him. I can't tell you if he's going to be the guy, but I think he's got qualities, and he definitely has the leadership qualities, and the young players gravitate to him, where I think if he can improve his accuracy, improve as a passer, I think he's got a chance. And that would be fantastic for the Eagles if he can be the guy.
John, I agree with you. That's the best case scenario, because you would have a young quarterback on a cost-effective rookie deal. You can build the rest of your roster. But if you look at this opportunity, and it goes through every sport. You cover the Sixers. You had Daryl Morey on your podcast. You covered the Phillies. You had Bryce Harper on. So the old adage is don't listen to what a team says. Watch what they do. When I watch what the Eagles do, they had a lot of interest in Zach Wilson. There was a firewall. They said they couldn't get him. They moved back. I always say Russell Wilson is the white whale of this team. They never stopped talking about potentially getting him in 2012. He might be available next offseason when they're flush with money and they have those 3 first-round picks. Deshaun Watson, maybe the allegations clear up. They've had significant interest in Deshaun Watson. Even Aaron Rodgers, if he doesn't get the Jeopardy gig. How big is this opportunity for real for Jalen Hurts? Or are the Eagles really thinking about, all right, let's get through 2021 and 2022 is when we really hit it?
Well, look, I definitely think that's the case. I mean, we're not talking about a guy who was drafted in the top 5 picks like Carson Wentz was. So Jalen Hurts is a second-round pick, and the Eagles really like him. Now, when they drafted him, they thought he could be a cost-effective backup quarterback for the next 5 years with a chance to be a starter in the NFL. And I think that's exactly what their position is now. He's got a chance. But if they're 100% all in on him, I agree with what Daniel Jeremiah told me. They make that pick at 6 and they get a Kyle Pitts or a Jamar Chase. So I think they are telling you, we don't know. And we're leaving all of our options open, which I think right now is the best play, because Jalen Hurts, he's got starter traits. He's got some things he can work on to be a starter, but we don't know. We have no idea. So I agree with you. I really think the Russell Wilson situation is really serious. I think these tea leaves are all showing you that Russell Wilson eventually is maybe asking out now. Who knows? But he eventually is going to ask out. Those things are not leaked out or sent out unless it's a plan to get out of Seattle. And I actually thought about Aaron Rodgers the other day, because does he have any guaranteed money after this season? I read somewhere that, I mean, I could be wrong, but I think there's an issue with guaranteed money, and I think he wants a new contract.
Yeah, he does. They restructured it, but next year they'd have a really easy time moving on. So people are assuming, Jordan Love, they have it as the heir apparent. So 2022, Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be elsewhere.
And John, you said it. After this season, look, I just consider this season finding out if Jalen Hurts is the guy. After this season, you have 3 possible first-round draft picks, and I believe they have a total of 9 total picks next year. So 20 picks over these next 2 years, and you're going to have your salary cap worked out, and you're going to have a lot of space to go after it. So, look, I think this is going to be a down year, a bad year. Rebuild this organization, and next year you're going to have a shot at these quarterbacks, whoever is available. I mean, Aaron Rodgers would be tremendous. Russell Wilson, I do think they've loved Russell Wilson since they missed out on him. But as I said, best case scenario is Jalen Hurts surprises us or shows us that he can be a starter, and then you've got all this capital to be able to go out and surround him with talent.
By the way, if Aaron Rodgers gets the Jeopardy gig, I want him anyway. Well, you got three guys right here who do multiple gigs. So I have faith that Aaron Rodgers could do multiple gigs. That's why they have off seasons. Forget nobody's showing up for off season workouts anyway. So Aaron Rodgers could go and tape Jeopardy. It wouldn't be a problem as long as he came back to the Eagles in the fall. All right. Speaking of quarterback, we're talking about all these possibilities. What round will the Eagles draft a quarterback in the upcoming draft? So much was made of how dare they use the second round pick on Jalen Hurts last year after turning everything over to Carson Wentz. We don't think it's going to be the first round. Could it be as early as the second? Is it going to be the third round? Is it going to be a sixth round that we're going to over-evaluate? When do you think Howie Roseman pulls the trigger on a quarterback draftee who will be number 3 in that room behind Jalen Hurts and Joe Flacco this season?
I'm going third day.
Day 3. All right.
Third day. And look, I think the Eagles get beat up about this with the quarterback thing, but man, I mean, it can't be overstated enough that look at the movement in the NFL with these quarterbacks over the last, let's say, 3-4 years. I mean, all of the top 3 quarterbacks that were picked are on other teams now. You even go back to Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. I mean, Jared Goff, Carson Wentz, all these guys, they're on different teams now. You look at the NFL now, I think Jared Goff is a decent quarterback. Every team is looking to upgrade, and if they see somebody they can go get at the quarterback position, they are doing it. And they are eating all of this salary cap space. I mean, it's really unbelievable. And so if you have a chance at any time to get a quarterback that is better than the one you have, the Eagles are going to do that. And I remember people beating them up for signing Sam Bradford and then finding a way to get from 13-2 to draft Carson Wentz. Why? Because they know they needed a quarterback. All right, let's get Sam Bradford signed. They didn't know they could move up from 13-2. That was miraculous. Mm-hmm. And so no matter what, you're always going to try to go out and find a guy that you think can be your franchise quarterback. So I definitely think they will draft a young quarterback, and I would go day 3. But, I mean, I was seeing all this stuff about, well, how can they not know about Jalen Hurts now after they just went through that with Carson? Well, guess what? Carson Wentz, in the end, decided he did not want to come back as the Eagles quarterback with Jalen Hurts behind him and maybe some of the younger players gravitating more towards Jalen. And Carson sees that. He didn't want to be a part of that situation anymore. So I just think you always take a shot at quarterbacks, and the Eagles have the assets now to be able to do that next year after this season.
All right, last one from me, John. Appreciate you hopping on the program. The quarterback dynamic now with South Jersey's own Joe Flacco coming back, veteran guy, Super Bowl winner, 10 postseason wins, seems to want to compete. How do you think that's going to mesh? Second part, greatest wrestling interview you've ever done.
Oh, man. Well, I guess I'm going to have to think about that second question while I'm answering this one. Look, I think Joe, from what I hear, I think he was good for Sam Darnold. That's what I hear. We're not talking about the play on the field. We're just talking about being a support, helping him. Even though Joe wants to be the starter, of course, I don't think that's going to happen. But I think Joe will be good for Jalen, and I think it's good that Joe is home. So I think, I mean, once again, everybody was criticizing the Eagles for spending that much money on a backup quarterback. I would have liked them to get Jacoby Brissett as a backup because I think that he would have been great bringing kind of like Nick Sirianni's approach to some of the other guys on offense, but that didn't work out. He got more money than Joe Flacco. But to answer your second question, greatest wrestling interview. Wow, that is a good question. So I'm going to go with, I'm going to go with The Ultimate Warrior.
Wow. All right.
Just the things he revealed. It's fascinating because in wrestling history, you've got great showmen and then you've got great tactical wrestlers. And Vince McMahon kind of built made wrestling a national phenomenon, not so much because of the workers, but because of
The
the showman.
showman. Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
Hulk Hogan and all those guys. So Ultimate Warrior really didn't have like, great wrestling skill.
No.
But man, he connected and he got over, as they say in wrestling, with the public. And so he was just a fascinating interview, wanting to get that respect from the workers. Because, I'm not saying he was mistreated, but a lot of the workers resented him.
Yeah.
The push that he got. But, fascinating person, rest in peace.
All right, I'm going to follow up in my partner's footsteps and ask you a two-part question, and I think you'll like both because one's a very simple yes-no answer, and the other one you can't be wrong about it because it's only an opinion. A yes-no question, will Friday of draft week be a Johnny Sunshine Airport Day? Eagles' first-round draft pick. Will you be heading to Philadelphia International potentially to get him on camera before anybody else? And part two is, no, you're a big wrestling guy, but maybe only surpassed by your love of Bruce Springsteen. What is the most underrated Bruce song ever? And you can create your own definition of underrated. For me, that would take out any of the ones who ever went to top 10 on a Billboard chart or whatever. What's your most underrated Springsteen song? And are you airport bound the day after the Thursday night start of the draft?
All right. Well, to get another plug in, I am cleared for takeoff. I was hoping originally when they were the 6th pick that Kyle Pitts could just drive up the road. Get Uber. Not going to happen. So yeah, I'm cleared for takeoff. And what a great question. Underrated. See, guys, I'm not like old school Bruce because I only started listening to him with The Rising. And then I really just got into him seeing his show at the Link. I believe he debuted Lincoln Financial Field. Maybe there was a soccer match, but underrated song for Bruce Springsteen. I don't know if it's underrated, but I'm going to go Growing Up.
Okay, that's not bad. I'm not as big a Springsteen fan as you are. It's been the same answer for me for close to 40 years now. I'm a Cadillac Ranch guy. Always thought that was one of Bruce's best songs. Never got the kind of play that his all-time great hits did, but Cadillac Ranch comes out, and I am the worst singer you've ever heard. And if I get that one while I'm in the car, yes, I roll up the windows, and I do have to sing it. So
that's awesome. And I would say just a song that I love and I listen to all the time. When I'm at the gym, I love No Surrender. And I love My Love Will Not Let You Down. It just gets me going. But a song that I just love and am inspired by, and Pat Riley one time said he listens to this song every day, Land of Hope and Dreams.
Yeah.
Ooh, I wouldn't have gone there, but that's Pat Riley. So I'm okay with not going there. Go ahead, John. John, appreciate you coming on board with us. The podcast is Take Off with John Clark. You'll continue to see him on NBC Sports Philly and Channel 10, and you'll see him every once in a while right here on Birds 365. John, thanks much for hopping on board.
John.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. Kayfabe.
There you go. Mr. Wrestling himself, John Clark, here with us on Birds 365. All right, McDonald McMullen coming back. We'll put a bow on the show. Keep it right here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.